Well, President Obama this week has succeeded in making the rich pay more in taxes, and he says he wants to raise taxes still. But our next guest says some of the president's wealthiest supporters may not be totally on board with that plan, at least when it comes to their own bank accounts. Yesterday, I spoke with columnist Michelle Malkin about who's ducking their tax payments and how. So, Michelle, the Vice President of the United States says it is patriotic. It is our patriotic duty to pay more in taxes. And you say he needs to be preaching that to his own Democratic choir, the Democratic donors who helped put President Obama in office. Let's start with Google.
Yeah, that's right. A vast majority of Google campaign contributors donate to the Democrats, and many high-level Google executives are big champions and cheerleaders of Obama. And yet this company, at the end of last year now, revealed in a filing from a Netherlands subsidiary that they have $10 billion that will be protected from taxes, corporate taxes and tax hikes because of a shelter that they've set up in Bermuda. And I'd really like to hear from all of those Obama campaign operatives that made it such a huge issue over the last campaign cycle when they lambasted every last Republican for supposed and purported offshore tax havens, how they feel about their Google supporters' use of this same tax avoidance strategy.
I know the people over in the UK, the government's upset over there because they're the ones who believe they're entitled to that $10 billion, not America. So
Yes.
Maybe we don't pay as much attention here since we won't get the money even if we could. Okay, but let's move on because there's a long list. The Washington Post. You say the Washington Post is taking advantage of certain tax maneuvers that don't necessarily equate to paying more.
Yeah, they sure are. These privileged elites who publish editorials in favor of Obama's tax increases at the same time that they praise their candidate for his supposedly noble protection of the middle class, themselves took out a year-end dividend payment, upwards of $70 million that they'll give to their investors to avoid all of these higher tax increases that are now hitting everybody else in the pocketbook this year. And among those who will benefit are, of course, the investors of Berkshire Hathaway, Obama supporter Warren Buffett's company, which will reap probably $17 million as a result of this year-end dividend payment.
So it's not, I mean, lots of folks, we talked about this when Mitt Romney was running for office. I mean, the law allowed him to pay a certain rate on capital gains as opposed to income tax, and he did that, and that was legal, and he was allowed to do that, and this was legal of the Washington Post to pay out dividends before the year end. But you're suggesting there's a hypocrisy since it's trying to take the moral high ground on the wealth inequality and the need to pay more in taxes.
Sure, not just suggesting it, but stating it plainly and flatly, right, Megan, that it is the phenomenal hypocrisy of these Obama supporters who poured hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of dollars over the last two campaign cycles into a candidate who has profited so much from class war demagoguery and then turned around and either looked the other way or, in some cases, facilitated or helped or even cheerleaded the kind of tax avoidance strategies that they castigate their political opponents for using. And I think that's an important point that you make, Megan. Nobody's saying that there's anything criminal or illegal about this, but the selectivity with which they show outrage when certain corporations engage in these tax avoidance strategies versus others, it's very telling.
Well, we saw something this week with the big tax break that the fiscal cliff deal included for Hollywood, and this had been provided in the past, but still, I mean, this is a fiscal cliff. This is a time where we're supposed to be looking at spending and odds and ends and crossing our T's and dotting our I's, and somehow Hollywood winds up with a $70 million tax break in it, and that includes a lot of big Obama donors, and that raised some eyebrows in Washington and beyond.
It certainly did, and Hollywood gets a pass in so many instances where many of these wealthy elite moguls have one set of standards for themselves and another set of standards for everybody else. And with regard to these kinds of tax breaks, I named George Lucas and Dr. Dre as two more of the millionaires and billionaires out there who engaged in very clever tax avoidance strategies for their corporations. In the case of George Lucas, selling off his company company, Lucasfilms, to Disney before the end of the year for $4 billion in cash and stock so that he could avoid corporate tax increases this year. And Dr. Dre, who another beneficiary of these overseas tax havens for his very successful company Beats by Dre, the headphones that put him #1 on the Forbes list of highest paid musicians, trying to escape the high corporate tax rates that everyone else here is forced to pay.
We just
I guess good for them, but...
Well, we just talked about Al Gore selling current TV to Al Jazeera, and he wanted the deal to close before the first of the year because he didn't want to have to pay the higher tax rates that he helped put in office when he was under President Clinton. He liked the Bush tax rates better, but it didn't work out because the deal closed on January 2nd, Michelle.
Yeah, crocodile tear for that. But yeah, hypocrisy overload on that deal.
Thanks for being here. Michelle Malkin, everybody.
You bet. Take care, Megan.